Hello and welcome to our IG Live. We come here every week on Thursdays, usually at 12 noon Eastern Time, although watch the announcements because we do like to accommodate all the different time zones that our members live in. So be sure to watch out for that to see exactly what time it's going to be. But today we are coming to you with an interview with Leticia Amaya. She is the head of LA Literacy Tutoring. She's been an educator for many years and helped children with literacy skills. Hello. She's helped children with literacy skills and helping empower them to be successful not only in the classroom, but also to build set them up for lifetime learning. And so that's really what we're all aiming for. We want kids to be successful and feel confident, but especially to be curious about the world and to really be a lifelong learner. And so she's going to be talking to us about why literacy is so important to that and what we can do to support our children in literacy. And especially we're interested in her specialization in bilingual education, bilingual literacy especially. And hello, we'll be talking to her exactly about what does that mean and why is it so important. And so if you have any questions about the topic, please be sure to let us know in the comments. And if there are any topics that you want to see us cover, please let us know. Hi.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good, and thank you for joining me so early. I know I'm also in California, so I know this is a little early, so I appreciate that. Good. Oh, hold on. I think I just lost your audio a little bit. Can you hear me okay? Okay, I can't really hear you. It's very faint.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, now. Perfect.
Okay, sorry.
No, not at all. Well, why don't we go ahead and jump in? You can introduce yourself and tell us about what you do. I know you have been an educator for many years, and now you have the tutoring business. So tell us more about it.
So I'm Leticia Amaya. I've worked in education for over 20 years, and I basically cover everything in literacy. So I focus on reading and writing in Spanish. I'm a big believer in the foundational skills of like phonics and phonemic awareness in English and Spanish. And I work with kids with various reading abilities. So some kids, parents just want, that constant support. And then other parents, their kids might have very specific needs. So then I work with them and give them that support.
That's so wonderful. Thank you. And you've been getting some lovely comments here.
Thank you.
Yeah. And so tell us, where does this passion for literacy and especially bilingual education, where does that come from? Why is that so important to you?
Well, I'm a firm believer that I think everything starts with literacy. So I think that in order to learn math, in order to perform science experiments, like the foundation is literacy.
Yeah,
so sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think I've seen that in my own life with my kids also, just to let them follow their own curiosity and be a little more independent when they start reading. That opens up so many different, no matter what their interests are, if they can read about it on their own, then that kind of opens up the whole world to them.
Yes. I think literacy just kind of brings everything together. I think it helps children's imagination. It helps them travel, to different places as they immerse themselves in books. It also, helps them feel good about that they're able to read either through pictures or words, because we do read through pictures. So I just think, I think it's a big foundational skill, and I think it's like universal. Like they need to be able to read, to access all content areas, and even in the real world, right?
And what about the bilingual education? Why is that so important to you?
Specifically with bilingualism, I think that our country, is changing, and I think as a community, we want to make sure and instill the idea of like bilingualism and being trilingual, and just the importance of other languages. Like if you talk to parents who are raising kids in other countries, either Latin America, Europe, Asia, like they'll all tell you that like other languages are offered at a very young age. And so I think the US has some catching up to do when it comes specifically for that. So I just think it's important to support and also motivate children to explore other languages, whether it's Spanish or Italian or Japanese. Like, I just think it's so important because the research shows what happens to the brain when children are learning other languages. They have like stronger cognitive skills, they have analytical skills, like that's all research based. And our children are like little sponges. So what better way than to immerse them in language and then also help them learn about the culture, like where does this language come from and what does it have in common with my culture, right? So children start to make those connections. I think that's how you can tie in the social justice part of like loving other cultures and understanding other cultures and knowing that we all have some common threads.
Right. And I'm curious, so when you get requests for support for bilingual education or bilingual literacy, is it mostly from families who are monolingual and their kids are learning another language, or is it also from families who maybe have, for example, Spanish as a heritage language and they're trying to help kind of bolster that as their kids are getting older, or is it kind of a mix? Who is
It's
it?
a mix.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a mix. I get a little bit of both. So I would say it's probably half and half. I think now a lot of parents, even parents with like a Latino background, like even they are starting to understand, like, there's a big importance in maintaining our language. It's part of our identity, our ancestors, our culture. And so for them, a lot of them, their children might be like heritage language learners. Like maybe they speak English at home, but they do have like some type of Spanish speaking background. So the parents understand the importance. And then on the flip side, we also have a community of children whose parents are all for their children learning Spanish, and they really want them to have, as close to that like Spanish accent as possible. So they want them to practice outside of school. They want them to have that exposure because the parents understand, whether they're Latino parents or parents of various cultures, they understand that we live in an English language world. And so children are going to learn English socially, academically, like that's going to come because that's what schools focus on. But for our children, like they need other avenues of exposure. They need other angles of exposure so that they can continue to increase their listening skills, their conversational skills, their language skills.
Do you think that that's something that you've seen change? I mean, you've been in education for a long time. I'm just curious because I feel like in the past, maybe not so recently, but definitely in the past there was this idea that kids who spoke a language other than English at home, that the parents really should focus on English, that having that mix was going to make it harder for them at school, and there wasn't really the emphasis, say, in learning to read in Spanish or to read books with your kids in Spanish. Is that something that you think is changing now?
I think it depends what state you're living in. I lived on the East Coast for over 20 years. And so I lived in New York. And so in New York, like, you know, bilingualism, trilingualism is like very common. And so we're talking about, Mandarin, French, Italian, Spanish. So there's opportunities even in public schools for children to learn multiple languages besides English. So I think specifically like being here in California, I think there's been a shift. And I think that, um, the higher beings and people in charge are starting to understand that, there is some importance to learning other languages. Like I said, the research is there. And so it's really about knowing your research, understanding how children learn and the psychology behind it, right? And so I think it's shifting. I think, dual language education is really big here in California now, but I do remember a time where it wasn't, and bilingual education was taken away, which I was like, gasp, what is happening?
Right.
So I think it's shifting, and I think it's shifting in the right direction. I think there's still work to do. I mean, as an educator, we have to constantly advocate for our littles and remind, you know, superintendents and the board of education, like, why it's so beneficial for our children to learn languages.
And that goes back to this role of parents. I mean, as being advocates and trying to support kids in the class, what they're doing in the classroom, which a lot of times parents want to do that, but they're not really sure how to do it. So, what advice do you give parents if they're trying to support their kids in the classroom, whether it's learning a new language or just in general with literacy skills? What can they be doing?
I think if English only is your primary language in the home, I'm sure parents have already received tips on, like, read books, listen to music. That couldn't be more true. I also encourage, like, it's all about consistency and routines. So if you're doing dinner time and it's all in Spanish, stay consistent with it. Don't change it, because then the children start to kind of like, oh, well, we didn't do it yesterday. Why are we doing it today? So it's really about consistency. And it's also like, if one of the parents speaks the language being learned, like, for example, in my household, Spanish, like, I do Spanish with my son, my husband does English, and we stay consistent that way. It's hard. It gets hard at times because, again, we are in an English world, but again, it's about consistency. I also suggest reach out to your community. I feel like specifically in California, we can be very suburbia, right? And we go home and we stay home. There's so many cultural centers out there. Your local libraries even have read alouds in different languages. Reach out to neighbors who maybe have kids in similar ages. Have those play dates with children that are also learning these languages, because that's what's important. The children can learn from each other. So for me, it's about play dates, reading, music, and being consistent in the home. Like, if every day the parents are the only ones, let's say, speaking Spanish, and the children refuse to participate. If you just keep with it over time, they will participate. They're going to be resistant because, again, we live in an English world. So it's about, let's be consistent. Like, put on the music, read the stories, do it like clockwork. Look for those cultural activities and immerse them. We live in a diverse area in California, and there's so many different cultures, that we can go to specific areas and know that we can get Japanese food or Chinese food, or you want to kind of take them to different places where that they can be exposed to other cultures and practice the language that they're learning.
Right. I love that. And that also ties into that idea of making it something fun for them.
Yes.
We're talking about getting that resistance. If you're taking them to a cultural event, not only do they
Yes.
see, oh, there are other people that speak this language, not just mom, but
Yes.
then it's something really fun for them to learn about. Do you have other tips, especially for when you get that kind of resistance from kids, especially as they get older? I feel
Yes.
like with mine, it was really easy when they were little,
Mm-hmm.
and as they've gotten older, it seems like it's gotten harder.
Again, I think it's about consistency. I can definitely relate to my son's in elementary. He's in the upper grades. I think, again, it just really comes down to just keep doing it with them. Like, look for things that spark their interest.
Mm.
Audiobooks are really big in our home, and so we do audiobooks in English and Spanish. He gets to choose, like, specific days, so that has been really helpful. I've also reached out to, like, cultural centers to find out, like, different activities going on. And for us, like, I want to make sure there's a balance between the Spanish and the English. So I know to go to certain mercaditos where I know it's only going to be Spanish speaking. And even the words, like the little titles, like when you're going through the aisles and it describes, like, what's on the shelves or what's in the produce area, it's all in Spanish. And so I purposely have those special trips where I'm like, oh, I need to find this. Can you help me? Like, I pretend I don't know certain things. And so I can be guided through it because he's the expert, right? So I try to put it, he's older, so I try to put it like more on him versus like me guiding it. Like, okay, let's sit here and read this Spanish book because he might not want to do that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, I love that idea. And I just want to go back to what you said about the audiobooks, because I know you have on your blog, which people haven't checked it out, you can go to the link in our bio.
Yes.
In the blog, you also have, I believe, a list of Spanish language podcasts,
Yes.
kind of along the same lines, which I thought was such a fun idea. It hadn't occurred to me to just put on a podcast, and I didn't realize how many were out there.
Yes.
Oh, and
Yes.
Susie comment, that's a great idea. I label certain things in Hindi in our kitchen for the same
Yes.
reason. That's a great idea too.
That's a great idea. You can do a scavenger hunt with them. Right now, the holidays are coming. So think about what do what are some traditions that you have? And like maybe instead of just opening the gifts, like whether you're celebrating Hanukkah or Kwanzaa or Christmas Eve on the 24th, like maybe you put them on a scavenger hunt and you put it in that specific language that you want them to practice. Now it's fun, it's interactive, and
Mhm.
they get to go look for something. So again, it's definitely creativity. And yes, on my blog I have a list of audibles that I think are really helpful. Some of them seem like they haven't been updated, but they still have for you to listen to the
Mhm.
audibles. So I really love that they're still there. And we listen to the same stories over and over. Like there's certain stories that he loves and he doesn't mind listening to and he requests them. So again, I think it's about exposure, giving them that language.
I love that. And I want to make sure before we go that people know I mean, we talked about your blog, which you have a lot of resources there, but about the services you offer. So if parents are doing this, but they feel like they want a little more support and they come to you, what kind of things can they get from you, like services you offer? What are the challenges that people come to you with that they're really looking for support on, and how are you able to help them?
So some of the services I offer are you can come to me, and if you want to maintain the language, then we can talk about where your child's at and next steps. I usually create like a goal, and then I do Zoom. Then what I do is kind of give the child like a little care package of like all the materials they're going to use, like a specific book, maybe a notebook or a drawing book, crayons, and so when they're on with me, like it's very interactive. We might be some art integration. And so I'll do that to like say for language maintenance for children who need like specific tutoring, like maybe they're learning the language for the first time. I might give them some Spanish games that I'll do with them on Zoom. If it's for children that parents want them to learn how to read, then I have specific toolboxes that I give them, and I work with them one on one and help them learn how to read. And the biggest thing for writing, I think, is adding details or kind of like expanding on their ideas. So I have specific activities I do for them for that.
And do you have a certain age range that you specialize in, or what ages?
Yes, so like ages 4 to 12, and I have worked with adults before because I have a certification in working with um, people that have different reading disabilities or dyslexia, but it's mainly ages 4 to 12 that I work with, and yeah, at elementary age and some middle school, again, if it's like language based.
And I should say we are focusing mostly on bilingual education, but that's
Yeah,
only one of your specialties. So if they just want support for their kids in general for reading, I know you have
yes,
a lot of different, like you say, you kind of specialize in all these different learning disabilities or challenges that kids have.
yes,
So it's not just for Spanish; it's also just
right.
for in English, right?
Yes, exactly.
Mhm. And so for anybody who's interested, when we have this on YouTube, we'll have the direct link to her website, or you can just go to the link in her bio. And if anybody's joining us late, this is going to be up on Instagram in a few minutes. And like I said, later on YouTube. Any last thoughts you want to share before we go?
I think, as parents, I always say follow your gut and like do things that feel natural with your children, do things that feel organic. The more exposure you can give them, the better, specifically for language development. Make it fun, make it exciting, think outside the box. And no matter what, don't give up. My son is speaking Spanish right now. We're so proud of him, and he's taking that leap and trying, and he's not embarrassed. And that's a big deal for kids. And just be really patient. If your child is learning another language, just know the research shows it can take anywhere from 7 to 8 years. And I recently learned that in fifth grade, after fifth grade, there's a little bit of they hit a little bit of a wall,
Mhm.
and then they take off again. So don't get discouraged. They're learning a language, they're thinking in two languages, and we need to give them that time and space and focus on like the successes versus like, okay, let's push them forward. It will pay off.
Oh, that's very encouraging. As someone who's trying to raise bilingual children,
Yeah.
that's encouraging to hear,
Yeah.
especially like you said, that does feel like there's sometimes when you kind of hit a wall. That's interesting about, the age that you're talking about. Thank you so much for taking time to join us. I know you're quite busy and this is
No
early on the
problem.
West Coast, but I appreciate you
No
taking the time to
worries.
talk with us, and I encourage anybody who's interested in this topic, which I know a lot of our viewers are, go check out our website and her resources and the services that she offers. And like I said, it'll be up, if you just joining us late, it'll be up in a few minutes on Instagram and later on YouTube. Thank you so much. It was such a
Thank you
great,
so much.
thanks. Bye,
Good
everybody.
talking to you. Bye.